1934 March of 15. Mid-afternoon light already going thin. The office is smaller than Walter Wanger expected. Not a studio office, not executive size, just four walls crowded inward by filing cabinets, paper stacks leaning like exhausted witnesses. The air smells faintly of dust and ink. Somewhere outside, a typewriter stops. No one speaks. Wanger is standing. He hasn't been offered a chair. Across the desk sits Joseph Breen, jacket buttoned, tie straight, hands folded with deliberate neatness. His expression is pleasant, not warm, not cold, professional, the kind of face that never has to explain itself. Between them lies the script. It's been rewritten, carefully, thoughtfully, all the edges sanded down. Wanger knows this script, knows where it used to be dangerous, knows how much money the studio has already sunk into it. He also knows what this meeting is for. He just doesn't expect how little effort it will take to end it. Breen lifts the script with two fingers, not the whole thing, just the last few pages. He doesn't flip through, he doesn't skim, he already knows what's inside. He smiles. Not a big smile, a polite one, a smile you offer a stranger on a train. Wanger watches his eyes, trying to read something in them. Approval, disapproval, hesitation, anything. There is nothing. Breen taps the corner of the final page against the desk. Once, soft, paper against wood. The sound lands heavier than it should. He closes the folder. That's it. No lecture, no correction notes, no raised eyebrow, just the folder, sealed shut, placed squarely between them like an object that has suddenly become dangerous. For a moment, neither man moves. This is not how these meetings usually go. There is usually discussion, a negotiation, a phrase like "if you adjust this," or "we might reconsider that." Breen has a reputation for firmness, yes, but also process, he explains himself. Not today. He looks up at Wanger and says one word. Quietly. Not sharp, not threatening. Just precise. The word isn't shouted, it isn't dramatic, it doesn't sound like censorship, it sounds administrative. And that's what makes it lethal. Wanger feels the room change before he fully understands why. The temperature doesn't shift, but something inside his chest tightens anyway. He knows this feeling. He's felt versions of it in studio boardrooms, during contract disputes, in conversations where power rearranges itself without warning. But this is different. This isn't a fight. This is a door being closed without being slammed. Breen leans back slightly, hands still folded. Smile still present, faint and courteous, as if he's just delivered good news. Outside the office, footsteps pass, someone laughs in the hallway. The world continues, unaware that something has just been quietly erased. Wanger opens his mouth to respond, then stops. Because he understands now what the word means. Not immediately, not intellectually, but instinctively. It means the film can exist. It can be shot, edited, scored. But it cannot be released. Not openly, not safely, not with the backing it needs to survive. It means no theater will want to touch it, no newspaper will advertise it without hesitation, no exhibitor will defend it if pressure comes. It means the studio will be asked questions it doesn't want to answer. It means silence, not protest, will follow the film everywhere it goes. Breen hasn't banned the picture. He's done something more effective. He's made it radioactive. Wanger feels the imbalance now. He realizes he's been standing this entire time while Breen has never shifted in his chair. The desk between them suddenly feels wider. He glances at the folder again, the rewrite he thought was safe. The compromises already made, scenes softened, dialogue rephrased, meaning diluted just enough to pass. It hadn't mattered. Because Breen never needed to argue content. He controls context. The Production Code Administration doesn't just approve films, it defines what can safely be shown, promoted, defended. It decides which pictures move quietly through the system and which ones stall unseen until they rot. And Breen knows this. He doesn't need to say it. That single word carries the entire system behind it. Wanger considers pushing back. He considers asking for clarification, for specifics, for a reason he can relay to the studio. But Breen's posture tells him something important. There will be no more words today. This meeting is already over. Breen stands smoothly, no rush. He offers his hand. The gesture is almost kind. Wanger shakes it automatically, aware of how normal it looks, how harmless it would seem to anyone watching through the open door. Two professionals concluding a routine meeting. No raised voices, no conflict. Just a decision. As Wanger turns to leave, the weight of it settles fully. This wasn't about morality, or art, or even censorship in the obvious sense. It was about control. A system designed not to shout no, but to ensure that yes becomes too dangerous to pursue. Wanger steps into the hallway, script still under his arm, and realizes something unsettling. There will be no memo announcing what just happened. No headline. No record of refusal. Just a film that will quietly stop moving forward, and a studio that will understand exactly why. Behind him, Breen's office door closes softly. And with it, a future disappears. The pressure doesn't arrive all at once. That's the mistake people make when they talk about censorship in this era. They imagine a telegram, a ban, a letter stamped rejected. None of that happens here. Instead, the pressure arrives sideways. Walter Wanger returns to the studio with no document in his hand. No written objection, no list of demanded cuts. When executives ask how the meeting went, he hesitates before answering. He chooses his words carefully. He didn't approve it, Wanger says. He didn't reject it either. The room waits for more. There is nothing more to give. This ambiguity is the first consequence. It spreads quietly, infecting every conversation that follows. Without a formal refusal, the studio can't protest. Without approval, they can't proceed safely. Every department suddenly becomes cautious. Legal, advertising, distribution. Everyone understands what unapproved really means. Within days, the film's momentum slows, not stopped, slowed. Meetings get postponed, calls aren't returned as quickly. A regional exhibitor asks politely whether the picture has cleared yet. No one answers directly. Because no one can. At the center of it all is production code administration, an office that rarely needs to issue orders. Its real power is structural. It sits upstream from everything that matters: advertising approvals, trade paper coverage, theater confidence. A film without its blessing isn't illegal. It's just exposed. And in 1934, exposure is dangerous. Hollywood is still reeling from scandals that nearly broke the industry. Studios are terrified of public backlash, church boycotts, and civic bans. The code exists as a shield, a promise that the industry can regulate itself. And Joseph Breen is the man holding that shield. He doesn't call the studio again. He doesn't need to. The silence does the work for him. Inside the studio, a subtle shift begins. Executives who were enthusiastic about the project start asking risk-focused questions, not about the story, about the timing, the climate, the optics. Is this the hill we want to die on? Someone asks, half joking. No one laughs. The script itself hasn't changed, but its meaning has. It's no longer just a story, it's a liability, a potential trigger, something that could draw attention in the wrong way. Wanger senses the recalibration happening around him. He's been in Hollywood long enough to recognize the signs. Careers don't end here, they are redirected. Projects don't fail, they are deprioritized. And the most dangerous word in the studio vocabulary isn't banned. It's complicated. Weeks pass. The film remains officially alive, on paper, but the quiet questions keep coming. Theater chains ask whether the code seal will be present. Advertising partners inquire carefully about compliance. No one mentions Breen by name. They don't have to. Breen's authority works precisely because it never announces itself. He doesn't chase studios. Studios adjust themselves around him. And Wanger begins to realize something chilling. The meeting wasn't about this one film. It was instructional. A demonstration. By refusing to argue, Breen has shown the limits of negotiation. By refusing to condemn, he's avoided becoming the villain. There is no antagonist to fight, no appeal process to trigger. Only a system that quietly withholds oxygen. Inside the production code administration, the mechanism is simple. A note is made, a classification implied, no directive sent. Breen understands the psychology of fear better than most producers ever will. Studios are not afraid of censorship. They are afraid of uncertainty. An outright ban can be challenged, protested, even exploited for publicity. But uncertainty makes men cautious, conservative, silent. It makes them police themselves. Wanger tries once more to salvage momentum. He floats the idea of additional revisions, even softer edges, further compromises. The response is non-committal. Let's wait, someone says. Let's see how the climate shifts. That's when the realization hits him fully. Waiting is the punishment. As long as the film sits unresolved, it drains resources, attention, patience. Other projects move ahead, new scripts arrive, this one becomes old news without ever being news at all. Breen never has to touch it again. The system ensures the outcome. And then something more unsettling happens. Another producer, someone Wanger knows well, mentions a separate project in passing, a different script, different subject. And yet when describing a recent meeting with the code office, he repeats a familiar phrase. He smiled, the producer says, didn't say much. The same smile. The same calm. Wanger feels a cold recognition. This isn't personal. It's procedural. The code is teaching the industry how to behave without force, without spectacle, without fingerprints. One quiet word in one office has begun shaping dozens of decisions across the city. And no one will ever be able to point to the exact moment it happened. Because the power wasn't exercised publicly. It was understood. As the weeks stretch into months, the film's future becomes a question no one wants to answer. It still exists, but it no longer belongs anywhere, not in the release calendar, not in promotional planning, not in anyone's priority list. It has become something worse than rejected. It has become invisible. And somewhere in a paper-stacked office, Joseph Breen continues his day, reviewing scripts, making notes, saying very little, while studios quietly adjust their ambitions to match what he never explicitly demands. Wanger begins to wonder how many other films have died this way. Not loudly, not defiantly, but politely. And as he looks at the stalled project one last time, another question emerges, more disturbing than the fate of a single film. If this is how power operates when it is calm, what happens when it decides to act deliberately? By the end of the year, no one officially cancels the film. There is no announcement, no meeting where someone finally says the words out loud. It simply stops appearing on agendas, stops being referenced in memos, stops being defended when budgets are reviewed. It is not killed. It is abandoned. Walter Wanger notices the shift most clearly in how people speak around him. Not what they say, how they avoid saying certain things. Conversations trail off when the production code is mentioned. Eyes flick away when Breen's name comes up, as if even speaking it too directly might invite attention. This is the real aftermath. Fear has changed shape. The studio learns faster than Wanger does. Executives begin sending scripts to the code earlier than required. Writers pre-censor their own dialogue, directors remove scenes before anyone asks. The question is no longer will this pass, but why risk it? And Breen never has to repeat the word. That single, quiet moment in 1934 becomes a reference point, an unspoken lesson passed between offices, between producers, between lawyers and advertisers. Don't test the silence. Years later, when people talk about the production code, they'll frame it as a moral document, a set of rules, a list of prohibitions. But those who lived inside the system know the truth. The rules mattered less than the tone. Breen's real authority wasn't written anywhere. It lived in the gap between approval and refusal, in the gray space where careers could stall without explanation. Wanger continues working, his name doesn't disappear, his career doesn't collapse. That's the most unsettling part. The punishment is not destruction. It's adaptation. He becomes more careful, more strategic, more willing to compromise early rather than be quietly isolated later. He learns, as everyone does, that survival in Hollywood doesn't require rebellion or obedience, it requires anticipation. Knowing when not to push. Knowing when silence is safer than speech. And Breen remains exactly where he is. Inside the production code administration, scripts continue to arrive by the hundreds. Some are approved, some are adjusted, some, like Wanger, simply drift into administrative limbo. There are no files labeled destroyed careers. There don't need to be. The system leaves no scars on paper, only habits in people. Decades later, historians will struggle to document moments like this. There is no transcript of the meeting. No record of the word Breen spoke, no memo explaining why the film never moved forward. It will look like coincidence. Like a business decision. Like one project among many that didn't quite make it. But power doesn't always announce itself in ways that can be archived. Sometimes it operates through absence. Through what no longer gets said. Through projects that quietly disappear before anyone has to explain why. The most effective control doesn't need enforcement. It needs understanding. And in that small office in 1934, with its paper stacks and dust and polite smiles, Hollywood learned something it would never forget. That the most dangerous sentence is not, "You cannot make this." It's the one that implies, "You may proceed. At your own risk." The door closed softly that afternoon. And in many ways, it never reopened. The code would eventually fade, the rules would loosen, the names would change. But the lesson endured. In Hollywood, the quietest power is often the one that never has to speak again.